So you want to buy a game, but it's too expensive and you're 12 years old or a student or just you can't afford it. You want to start a career as a video editor, but the prices of all those programs, apps scare you off. And you're just starting out, so you don't really have any money. You want to watch a show, but it's only on that one streaming platform you don't subscribe to, and you don't feel like paying another $50 just for that one series. So what's left for you? Becoming a pirate. A person or company that profits from the illegal distribution of someone else's work or from illegal broadcasting of radio or TV programs. Officially, I've gotta straight up tell you this. Find the money for your cravings somehow. But the internet has been offering different ways, different solutions over the years. And it's really hard to pretend otherwise. In this video, we'll take a closer look at piracy. But this is by no means a how-to or an invitation to become a pirate. It's just a harmless little video essay about the piracy subculture and the weird, curious bits tied to this illegal yet still very lively trade. Piracy has been with us for as long as modern culture has existed on different media. There was always someone in a dark alley, at a market stall, or in a weird hallway saying, "What you like, what you know, I'll sell it cheaper," or sometimes even give it away for free. They can make a quick buck off of that, or sometimes they don't even care, and the original creator usually doesn't even notice that. Michael Jackson or Taylor Swift doesn't need another boat, right? That's how it worked for years, especially in Eastern Bloc countries, where getting Western cultural goods was difficult and at best expensive for the average person. But in this video we'll focus on a specific kind of piracy, computer piracy, namely the unlawful copying or distribution of computer programs that are protected by copyright. Enjoy the video. As soon as the computers became more common, it turned out that advanced software costs real money. You've got to do research, write some code, develop different features, and in the end you package it all into one product and you can sell it. So a new, very intriguing market was born, because what's being sold is something you can't actually hold in your hand. Something that exists only as a string of zeros and ones, a bundle of commands that when combined create a working experience. Whether it's a word processor, a spreadsheet app, or a simple game, all of it required someone's effort. So plenty of companies sprung up to make that software and sell it. Corporate buyers with fresh new terminals were more than happy to pay good money for a chunk of code. But home users, early hackers, and other enthusiasts, not so much. So they had to invent special protections, because nobody's gonna take anyone at their word that they actually bought the product and won't just hand it out to all their mates for one cheeky smile, wrecking the potential customer base in the process. That's exactly how the first simple protections showed up. Software used to be sold on special floppy disks that didn't want to play nice with copiers. Sometimes the software came with a physical key, a dongle of sorts, that you had to plug into your computer to run the program. Some programs even snooped around your system to check whether this was a genuine, legit copy or not. When copying floppies got too easy, developers started adding unique codes you had to type in manually before the program would start. There were lots of ways to do that, from plain old serial keys you punch in to weird elaborate systems like decoder wheels that came bundled with the game, without which you simply couldn't play because the game would ask for them. As protections evolved, so did the cracking groups. Groups of really talented people who, out of passion, for sport or just for kicks, sweated away trying to crack every protection that fell into their clever little hands. And the simple fact that it was all illegal, yeah, what about it? The first pirates dug into a program's code looking for the bits responsible for copy protection. Then they slapped in the right patches so that the software wouldn't ask any annoying questions and would just run without verification. A little later, as personal computers spread to the masses, serial keys became the standard. Those codes you had to type in to activate a program. Naturally, Naturally, the crackers adapted. Using reverse engineering, they learned how to generate keys that just simply worked. That's how keygens showed up. Tiny little programs that spit out valid serial numbers in seconds. Often the release would include a two-in-one package, one tool to patch the software so it ignored deep verification and another to generate the key, so that if you did everything right, all activated your software completely for free. And all of that usually came with amazing chiptune tracks, often composed by the crackers themselves or someone from their crew. It proves one thing: cracking wasn't just a skill, it was an art, a craft. Those releases were genuine masterpieces themselves. But I got ahead of myself, because here we get to something pretty important. Those cracks were made by people who, from the very dawn of the computer era, were completely fascinated by these machines. They tried to understand every single detail of how these pieces of machinery worked, pushing the hardware right up to its limits. And they did that often quite successfully. For many of them, cracking became a form of art. And from that art, the so-called Demoscene was born. It all started with short intros, little splash screens attached to a cracked software where the crackers bragged about who broke the protection and how. Over time, those intros grew flashier and more ambitious, until they evolved into standalone programs, demos. Demos were real-time programs that showcased the author's skills. Look what I can squeeze out of this machine. The user launching one would be bombarded with digital fireworks, scrolling text, rotating shapes, fake 3D or real 3D, wavy sign animations, all perfectly synced to chiptune music composed in old-school music composing tracking software. Eventually, the Demoscene completely split off from piracy. Demos were no longer add-ons to cracked software, but full-blown works of digital art themselves. Their creators began meeting at special demo parties, massive gatherings where they exchanged their creations and competed for the best demo, intro, or artwork. And that's why those old keygens had such distinctive music and visuals. That current style came straight from the demo art scene they grew out of. Alright, back to piracy. Along the way, one cracking crew after another rose and fell. Razor 1911, a Norwegian group founded in 1985. Deviants, around the turn of the 90s and 2000s, practically every big game was released by them for free on a launch day. Reloaded, born from Deviant's breakup, they focused on cracking AAA games. Skid Row, one of the longest running groups, they are nowadays famous for cracking games protected by Steam. Later, other teams popped up that specialized in sharing highly compressed, already cracked, ready-to-run game packs. One of those was someone hiding under the nickname FitGirl Repacks. FitGirl used existing cracks and then heavily compressed the whole game, so it was much easier and faster to download. And then you just ran the installer and everything was served up on a plate. All that's left is just to play. So you've got people having the time of their lives making patches and cracks, racing to see who can make the best, fastest, or most hypnotic keygen, and on the other side, poorer gamers and users who didn't have software money in their budget get to benefit from all of that. And who was screwed the most in all of this? The people who actually bought the games and software legally. They're the ones that had to deal with all the different hoops to jump through, typing in endless lines of activation keys, juggling broken or lost decoder wheels, or watching the printed serial numbers in their manuals fade into oblivion. So yeah, you paid for the product, but good luck accessing it. It sounds pretty absurd now. I mean, all you have to do is enter a simple key and boom, you're in, right? Well, not exactly. Because software and game developers kept competition to make sure that only paying customers get access to their software. And their methods became increasingly elaborate, invasive, and unfortunately also user hostile. A perfect example of that was Ubisoft around 2010, when the company decided that if you want wanted to play their games, even single-player ones, you had to stay constantly online. Every session had to be verified and continuously re-verified through their servers. Lose connection for a moment, your game could just shut down. Ubisoft claimed it was the truly effective way to fight piracy. Regular players, however, were just furious, because the system had plenty of flaws. Most notably, on launch day of the first games with this new DRM system, Ubisoft servers crashed from overload, leaving paying customers completely unable to play. As a form of protest, hackers and other digital troublemakers started DDoSing the servers, making the chaos even worse. A similar case happened with the release of Spore back in 2008. By the way, what an awesome game. No idea why they never made a sequel. Spore had such aggressive DRM that it became the most pirated game of the year, and it was flooded with one-star reviews and even got EA slapped with a class action lawsuit. Here's how bad it was. You could only activate the game 3 times with a single key. You're upgrading your computer and reinstalling the game? That's 1 gone. 2 tries left. Even if you wanted to play offline, you still had to connect to EA's servers for the initial activation. Once you set up your 3 activations, you had to call EA customer support to get your license reset. To make matters worse, the DRM system Spore used, called SecuROM, installed itself on your computer silently without clear disclosure and didn't even bother to uninstall itself even after removing the game. Naturally, that raised some serious security and privacy concerns. After those fiascos, big game companies finally eased up a bit, realizing that piracy can't be completely eradicated. Instead, they started focusing on giving players real reasons to buy games legally. That's why nowadays it's often worth paying. The paid versions on Steam, for example, give you access to tons of community-made mods and plugins, plus of course you get regular updates and other perks like cloud saves. That shift also gave rise to the idea of software as a service, where you don't actually buy the game, but rather a kind of long-term license to use it. That model comes with a whole new pile of problems too, but hey, that's a topic for another video, a problem not even exactly for my channel. In other types of commercial software, like video editing tools, the subscription model completely took over. You get access to your software as long as you keep paying, and in return you get some perks like cloud storage or instant access to the latest updates. But yeah, that model has its own massive downsides too, definitely worthy of a separate video. There was also another quiet revolution in commercial software, the rise of free, high-quality alternatives to expensive industry standards. Need to record audio? Why pay for Adobe Audition when you can use Audacity for free? Want to edit videos? Skip Premiere Pro and grab DaVinci Resolve. Photoshop? Try GIMP. Cinema 4D or Maya? There's Blender, and so on and so on. Even though I personally still prefer the paid tools, the free ones have gotten so good that they're absolutely worth considering. And even though that's more or less how the market looks today, every now and then a new company shows up thinking they've reinvented the wheel, promising the ultimate protection system that won't hurt legitimate users and will finally wipe out piracy once and for all. Trust me, bro. But it always ends in the same way. In 2014, Denuvo Anti-Tamper appeared, a system that for a while really did seem uncrackable. For a certain time, games protected by Denuvo weren't pirated on launch day, but months after release. That is, until cracking groups got faster. Eventually, they started breaking Denuvo titles even before the official release in some cases. And as usual, it turned out that the paying customers got the worst of it, because Denuvo was said to hog system resources and cause games to stutter or lag, at least according to many players who'd bought their copies legitimately. And in the meantime, in the background, something totally different was happening, because where these illegal games, cracks, and other illegal bits actually got downloaded from? From torrents, of course. BitTorrent is a protocol created in 2001 by Brian Cohen, who was looking for a quick way to share huge files without wrecking servers. A file is split into tons of tiny pieces, and everyone who downloads those pieces simultaneously uploads the pieces they've already got to others who are still downloading the same file. So the more people who have the file or are downloading it, the faster the network works, and the faster you get your copy. It was a kind of a revolution. Suddenly you could easily download massive files from several to dozens of gigabytes without necessarily needing one super powerful central central server. And while this tech was and still is being used for legitimate purposes, for example archiving cultural treasuries, yes, the Internet Archive distributes files via torrent, it turned out to be perfect for illegal distribution of software, and pirates absolutely fell in love with it. And the reason this happened comes down to how torrents actually work. Files weren't just easy to download, they were decentralized. You couldn't just turn off and delete illegal content from a single server because there wasn't a single server to hit. There were thousands of people's computers around the world, and no matter how deep-pocketed a corporation was, they just couldn't wipe that protected work from all those places at once. And so nowhere else but in Sweden, the legendary Pirate Bay was born. A site that was technically just a torrent search engine and a tracker, but in practice became the symbol of the entire piracy movement. It was open to everyone, no special invites, no shady vetting, and both its creators and users didn't see themselves as thieves, because the ideology behind it was clear. We're not stealing, we're sharing culture because culture belongs to all of us. Of course, countless attempts were made to shut the site down for, well, obvious reasons. The biggest pressure came from law enforcement trying to uphold copyright laws. In 2006, the police raided the Pirate Bay servers in Stockholm, seizing hardware and taking the site offline for a few days, only for it to come back 3 days later with double the traffic after the servers were moved abroad. The media had basically given them free advertising. In 2009, the site's founders were put on a trial and sentenced to 1 year in prison each, plus over 3.5 million euros to be paid in damages. But the Pirate Bay kept running because ownership was transferred to people not directly involved in the case. The result, not only another spike in traffic, but also the creation of the Pirate Party in Sweden. Over the years, the Pirate Bay has been blocked countless times under various court orders around the world. Each time the traffic dipped temporarily, but the site always came back through mirrors and clones, many of which are still floating around the web today. As for the founders, they've all done their time. Peter Sunde now works in private IT ventures. Fredrik Ney has said in many interviews he's no longer involved with the Pirate Bay. And Gottfried Svartholm, well, no one's quite sure what he's up to now, but he's probably still somewhere in the tech scene. Of course, there were plenty of other torrent websites, each with their own wild stories. So when authorities began cracking down harder on the Pirate Bay, a new giant rose from the digital depths: KickassTorrents, more widely known as Cat. Launched in 2008, Cat quickly became the most popular torrent site in the world, even surpassing the Pirate Bay in traffic. It was a bit different though, cleaner, more organized, and much friendlier to newcomers. It also had those infamous god-awful fake download ads. You probably recognize these ones. Giant green download buttons that looked exactly like the real link you need, but instead it threw you onto a sketchy gambling site or straight up into the land of pop-up naked people. Despite that, Cat was for many users a more civilized alternative to the slightly anarchic chaos of the Pirate Bay. But nothing good lasts forever. In 2016, history repeated itself. The FBI tracked down the site's alleged founder, Artem Wawlin, a Ukrainian citizen who was arrested in Poland while on vacation, so the site was immediately taken offline. The charges were serious, everything from copyright infringement to money laundering. In 2017, Wawlin was released on bail, and over $100,000 was paid for him, but he wasn't allowed to leave Poland as his passport was confiscated. Then in 2020, he broke the terms of his release and just vanished, just straight up disappeared. To this exact day, no one knows where he is, and his trial can't proceed until he's found and is brought back into custody. Cat did have a few resurrection attempts by some of the original website's moderators who were trying desperately to bring Cat back alive. The reboot that came the closest to the real deal though was eventually shut down in 2020. Still, plenty of copies and mirror sites popped up, all trying to mimic the original. But being honest, they're just not the same. Most are bloated with sketchy ads and questionable links that makes you wonder if the stuff you're downloading is really what the title claims it to be, or if you're just about to gift your computer a brand new virus instead. Because here's the age-old question: are torrents actually safe? Well, piracy has always been one of the easiest ways to accidentally invite some weird virus onto your computer. The kind of that in the best case just messes around for laughs, and in the worst case nukes your whole system and wipes every single file of yours. That said, the whole torrents equals instant virus on your computer is a bit exaggerated. Mostly propaganda meant to scare people into paying instead of, experimenting. Still, statistics don't lie, and cracked games are one of the most common sources of malware infections. So yeah, it's obviously better to pay, better to stay legal, and better to follow the rules. And I do encourage you to do that. But there are a few cases where honestly I think we can look the other way when someone turns pirate. And let me repeat it loud and clear once again. I'm not really encouraging anyone to become a pirate, and I'm definitely not explaining how to really do it. But I just have a deep feeling that piracy raised an entire generation of people who, if not for the access of expensive professional software, would have never had a chance to learn the skills that now actually let them afford those very same programs and games that made their childhood. Think about it. If you're just a kid trying to learn something super specific, good luck convincing your parents to drop $300 on a single program, or worse, $20 a month for a subscription service. If you're doing something purely for yourself, in my personal opinion, there's nothing that terrible about it. But if you're making money using paid software that you're not exactly paying for, then yeah, buy the damn license, otherwise you're just an asshole. Of course, like I said before, today we have many free or really cheap alternatives. But if 15 years ago Sony Vegas Pro hadn't mysteriously shown up on my computer somehow, you probably wouldn't be watching this video. I genuinely believe there are a lot of people who learned a lot by using this paid software, and they went to build on careers that now lets them easily pay for this software and lets them have this legally. Games, however, are a trickier case. I'm willing to believe that if someone's pirating games, they're often in a really difficult situation that genuinely doesn't allow them to pay for the stuff they want to enjoy, and we can't really do much about that. But if they ever get into a better place in their life, I hope they'll find a way to reward, for example, creators of a game that made their childhood, even if their family couldn't afford a given game back in the day. And as history shows us, fighting pirates is practically unwinnable, so piracy will always exist somewhere out there. Over the years, there have been a lot of anti-piracy ad campaigns. Most of them, however, have been unintentionally hilarious. The most legendary of all is probably that series where the narrator solemnly lists things you wouldn't apparently steal. You wouldn't steal a car. You wouldn't steal a handbag. So you wouldn't steal a movie. Piracy is theft. The absurdity, of course, was that these ads played before legally purchased DVDs, while pirates, well, didn't have to sit through that nonsense at all. So naturally, the whole thing became a meme over the years, with jokes like "you wouldn't download a pizza" and so on. And to top it off, it later turned out that the font used in the ad was pirated. So yeah, full-blown hypocrisy, 10 out of 10. Many of those campaigns were so clumsy that they practically encouraged piracy instead of discouraging it. Later, these campaigns became more positive on the note of, hey, you better support those creators, you should buy stuff legally, it's easy, fast, and someone worked really hard on this, so yeah, it's a better way in my opinion. But that's a completely different slice of piracy, one I mostly skipped in this video because movie and music piracy just seems really boring. Software piracy is just different, it's interesting. The given software has protection you must bypass, so you must mess with all of those tools and keygens, and there's an entire culture over it. Movies and music, however, sure, discs and streaming services have protection too, but ripping audiovisual stuff is basically just someone somehow extracting MP3 file and uploading it on the internet. Much less drama, much less craft. But that's just my opinion. When it comes to music, you have Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music, and all sorts of different streaming services, whatever you might use. And you basically have the same stuff wherever you go. And it's really cheap to get music legally because these services aren't that expensive. But when it comes to movies and different shows, it's more complicated. There are a lot of them now, each with different new movie, different new show you must watch. So people got tired of paying for all of them. And piracy piracy started creeping back into fashion. When 1 or even 2 subscriptions like Netflix or Disney Plus aren't enough to watch everything you want, the perfect breeding ground for some sort of a dark zone appears. When there are too many streaming platforms, each with their own exclusive must-see titles, that's when the pirates come out to play. Add to that the fact that these services keep getting more and more expensive, and you've got the perfect recipe for people saying, you know what, screw the corporations. So yeah, we're living through a genuine renaissance of piracy, at least when it comes to movies. There's also one more good side to piracy. Sometimes it's just absurdly difficult to watch a given movie, play a given game, and do it all legally. Sometimes piracy is just the one way you can do it. See, there are works that despite being really good, they simply vanished. None of the big streaming services bothered to license them. The DVDs or Blu-rays are long sold out and nobody sells them even second-hand anymore. It's the same with games. Some big publisher didn't feel like updating their online library with their old disc releases and poof, how do you get that game legally now? Sometimes you just can't. And then you're left with nothing but your own conscience to declare what's exactly right. So yeah, piracy will probably never truly disappear. The formats will change, the methods will evolve, but the core struggle remains the same. Convenience versus money, control versus freedom. I'm not encouraging anything, quite the opposite actually, but the conclusions, those are up to you. So please let me know in the comments what do you think about all of this. Thank you for watching.